This man will be our hero, for fate will make him indestructible. His name, Captain Scarlet.
Number 10. The Season That Never Was. Captain Scarlet ran one season, 32 episodes, and then it was over. Not because audiences walked away, not because the show ran out of story. The BBC came calling with a new commission. The production costs couldn't be justified for a second run, and the decision was made by economics. Just a ledger that stopped adding up. If hidden TV history, the real reasons beloved shows ended, is your thing, subscribing means you get the next deep dive the day it drops, not 6 months later when the algorithm decides you deserve it. Spectrum never got a rematch. 32 episodes to fight a war of nerves against an entire civilization. And then, the network moved on. The war was still being fought. Nobody told the Mysterons. Number 9. The terrifying power of reconstruction. The Mysterons' defining weapon wasn't a laser or a missile. It was something considerably more unsettling, the power of perfect duplication. Once they had observed any object or person, they could destroy the original and reconstruct an exact, obedient replica in its place. Cars, buildings, military hardware, high-ranking government officials, all fair game. This meant that virtually every episode of Captain Scarlet carried an undercurrent of genuine paranoia. Who was real? Who was already replaced? Spectrum agents couldn't just fight an enemy they could see. They had to constantly question whether the person standing next to them was still the person they'd known yesterday. There was no test, no scanner, no way to be certain. For a puppet show aimed partly at children, that's a remarkably sophisticated dramatic premise. No headquarters to blow up, no obvious weak point, just an invisible enemy that could be anyone, anywhere, at any time. Think about what that does to a team built entirely on trust, and then think about how Spectrum functioned under those conditions for 32 straight episodes. Every mission briefing was attended by people who might not be people. Every handshake could be the last one. And before you get too comfortable, that's still one of the most unsettling villain concepts in television history, puppet or otherwise.
Shut down motors. Maintain radio silence. Let's get out of here. No. Wait.
Number 8. Scarlet's shocking origin story. Here is the part that a surprising number of fans have either forgotten or never fully absorbed. Captain Scarlet started out as the villain. In the very first episode, he is killed by the Mysterons and reconstructed as one of their obedient agents. A perfect replica designed to carry out their war of nerves from the inside. He wasn't born indestructible. He was manufactured that way by the enemy. Then, through an extraordinary act of will documented across those early episodes, Scarlet breaks free from Mysteron control, the only reconstructed individual ever to do so. He keeps the regenerative powers permanently. The enemy's greatest weapon becomes humanity's greatest defender. It's foundational lore that some casual viewers missed entirely because the show established it quickly and moved on. But it recontextualizes everything that follows. Every time Scarlet walks into danger, remember, he is running on Mysteron hardware. He just decided to point it in a different direction. That's not a hero. That's a statement. And it's the kind of origin story that most modern franchises would spend 3 films building toward. Here it was in episode 1, delivered without ceremony, and then the series just kept going, as if that wasn't one of the most remarkable character foundations in children's television.
Captain Scarlet was there. Captain Scarlet. Whatever happened to Captain Brown may also have happened to Captain Scarlet.
Number 7. The Martians' Accidental War. The entire conflict, every sabotage mission, every assassination attempt, every threat against Earth across all 32 episodes started because of one catastrophic mistake. When humanity first encountered the Mysterons on Mars, a Spectrum captain misread the situation as hostile and opened fire on the Mysteron city before any actual threat had been confirmed. The Mysterons reconstructed their destroyed city in moments. They were not permanently harmed, but they were provoked. And they declared a war of nerves against Earth that would define the entire series. One trigger pull, one miscalculation, decades of consequences. The whole premise of Captain Scarlet is built on a judgment made in fear rather than reason. The bad guys aren't cartoonishly evil. They're responding to something real, something that actually happened to them, which, in a strange way, makes them far more frightening. Because you almost understand why. The aggressor, technically, was humanity. A 1967 children's show built its entire central conflict around the consequences of preemptive military aggression, and never once pointed a finger or delivered a verdict. It just let the war continue and asked the audience to hold both truths at once. That's an extraordinarily mature thing to ask of any viewer, let alone a Saturday morning one.
Angels is the right word for that team. I'm most impressed by all the precautions taken, Captain.
Number 6. The voice actor who didn't want the credit. Francis Matthews delivered one of the most distinctive voice performances in British television history as Captain Scarlet. That clipped, authoritative, slightly Cary Grant-inflected delivery that gave the character enormous presence, despite being technically a marionette. And he initially requested that his name not appear in the credits at all. His concern was straightforward and entirely understandable for the era. Matthews was an established presence in live-action film and television, and association with a puppet show, even a prestige puppet show, risked real career consequences in the British entertainment industry of the 1960s. Typecast fears weren't paranoia. They were legitimate professional calculation. The hierarchy between live action and animation was rigid, and it ran in one direction only. His name was eventually restored on later releases, and history has been very kind to the performance. Decades later, that voice is still the definitive sound of the character. Imitated, celebrated, instantly recognizable. Matthews became the character so completely that it's now impossible to imagine anyone else in the role. But there is something quietly ironic about the voice of an indestructible hero wanting to stay completely invisible. Spectrum is green, Francis, whether you like it or not.
However, I'll be happier when we reach our destination. We're dealing with forces that we don't completely understand.
Number 5. A price tag that shocked the network. Captain Scarlet was a substantially more expensive production than Thunderbirds, which had already set a high bar for production ambition in Anderson's world. The commitment to a darker, more sophisticated visual tone meant nothing was done cheaply. Sets were more elaborate, action sequences more involved, and the overall aesthetic demanded a level of craft that genuinely reflected the budget. You can see exactly where the money went the moment Cloudbase appears on screen. That wasn't a cheap floating aircraft carrier held together with optimism. That was a genuine production design achievement, built to look like it cost twice what puppet television was supposed to cost. Because it did. Every detail, the Angel launch bays, the control rooms, the Angel interceptors themselves, was executed with a seriousness of purpose that belonged in feature film production, not Saturday morning television. The irony is complete. The very ambition that made the show visually remarkable was simultaneously the financial weight that prevented it from running past a single season. Which brings us directly back to fact 10. The pattern holds. Anderson built something too good to afford twice. The most expensive puppet show on television lasted 1 year, looked extraordinary for every minute of it, and then the money simply ran out.
I have joined the M21. I should make contact with Captain Scarlet's car in a few...
Number 4. The evolution of supermarionation. Gerry Anderson's supermarionation technique took a significant leap forward with Captain Scarlet. The character puppets were deliberately designed to be more realistically proportioned and adult in appearance than the slightly exaggerated figures from Thunderbirds. Part of a conscious push toward a more serious, dramatic aesthetic that matched the darker narrative tone Anderson was pursuing. It worked visually. Captain Scarlet has a cinematic quality that distinguishes it immediately from earlier Anderson productions, but the more realistic proportions also made the puppets considerably harder to animate effectively. Achieving naturalistic movement from a marionette built to human proportions is a fundamentally different challenge than working with a figure designed to read well on screen in slightly cartoonish terms. The margin for error narrows considerably when the goal is realism, and the audience is primed to notice anything that breaks the illusion. The team pulled it off, but every smooth walk cycle and dramatic head turn you remember from that show was the result of painstaking, labor-intensive work that most viewers never thought about for a single second. That's when craft is working correctly, when it's completely invisible. The better the puppeteers did their job, the less anyone noticed them doing it, which is, depending on how you look at it, either deeply satisfying or one of the great unfairnesses of production history.
Captain Scarlet, this is Captain Black.
Number 3. Earth's Angelic Defenders. 5 pilots, all women, all elite, and they flew the most beautiful aircraft in Spectrum's arsenal. Destiny, Harmony, Melody, Rhapsody, and Symphony were among the most iconic characters in the series, and their combat sequences remain some of the most visually dynamic moments in the show's run. Each brought a distinct personality and genuine competence to the cockpit. They looked remarkable, and they delivered in every engagement. They weren't background decoration. They were the tip of the spear. For audiences watching in 1967, seeing 5 women as the primary aerial combat force of a global security organization was genuinely progressive. And the show never made a performance out of it. It was simply presented as obvious. No announcement, no commentary, no extended scene establishing that, yes, these women are really qualified. Just 5 exceptional pilots doing their jobs. That quiet confidence was exactly right. And it's part of why the Angels remained beloved long after the show ended. The die-cast model of the Angel Interceptor wasn't a bestseller by accident. That aircraft looked fast, standing still on a shelf.
And you'll be escorted by the Angel flight. The life of the world's president is in your hands.
Number 2. The unkillable hero. He died repeatedly, graphically, and then he stood back up. Scarlet's indestructibility was the central dramatic engine of the series, and Anderson leaned into it deliberately. Because Scarlet could survive any injury, catastrophic falls, explosions, being shot, vehicle crashes, the show was free to put him through sequences of genuine physical peril that would have been impossible with any conventionally mortal hero. The usual implicit guarantee of the protagonist's survival was replaced with something stranger, the guarantee of his return. What kept it from becoming a gimmick was the cost. He still felt pain, he still suffered, he just didn't stay dead. The regenerative ability came directly from his Mysteron reconstruction. He was, in the most literal sense, running on alien technology permanently bonded to his physiology. For a children's show, that's a surprisingly mature exploration of what heroism might actually feel like from the inside. Relentless, painful, without the option to quit. Scarlet didn't choose immortality. He was given it by an enemy. And then he had to figure out what to do with it, episode after episode, for the rest of a series that never got a second season to answer that question. The most indestructible hero in British television history never got an ending. He just kept going until the budget stopped him.
I see you have expert ratings on SPVs. It must be tricky facing backwards and driving by TV monitor.
Number 1. Gerry Anderson went dark on purpose. Gerry Anderson made a conscious, deliberate decision that Captain Scarlet would be significantly darker and more violent than anything he had produced before. This wasn't drift, it wasn't accident. Anderson wanted a grittier, more adult tone, and Scarlet's indestructibility gave the production explicit permission to portray genuinely dangerous scenarios that would have been completely off the table in Thunderbirds. The result pushed hard enough against the accepted limits of children's television in 1967 that the Australian Broadcasting Control Board formally flagged the series for excessive violence and moved to restrict it. That is not a minor footnote. That is a national broadcast authority objecting to a puppet show's content level. Not a film, not a primetime drama, a puppet show. Formally reviewed and formally restricted by a government regulator who presumably had to explain in official documentation why marionettes were a threat to public welfare. Anderson knew exactly what he was building. The darkness wasn't incidental. It was the entire point. He wanted Captain Scarlet to feel like the stakes were real, the danger was real, and the hero's sacrifice meant something. He succeeded so completely that a government regulator on the other side of the world felt obligated to step in. That might be the most punk rock thing a puppet show has ever accomplished, and it was planned that way from the beginning. Anderson didn't stumble into controversy. He aimed for it.
You'll find Captain Scarlet on the west corner of the Sky Park.
Bonus fact. Spectrum is green. 4 words, instantly iconic, still quoted by fans nearly 60 years later. Spectrum is green was the crisp, clear confirmation that a mission was authorized, a plan approved, and the operation moving forward. Uttered throughout the series, it became the show's most enduring verbal signature. There's something deeply satisfying about a world where operational authorization is delivered in 3 words. No lengthy briefings, no bureaucratic delay, no committee sign-off. Green means go. Decades later, fans still use it. Walk into any gathering of Captain Scarlet enthusiasts and drop that phrase. The recognition is instant and universal. That's the mark of writing that locked in permanently. Not a catchphrase engineered for merchandise, just a functional piece of show dialogue that turned out to be genuinely unforgettable. 60 years on, it still works exactly as designed. 3 words, 1 color, and the whole room lights up. From an accidental war triggered by a single panicked decision on Mars, to a hero running permanently on alien technology, to a production so ambitious it bankrupted its own future. Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons was never just a puppet show. It was a prestige science fiction drama wearing a children's television costume, and it paid for that ambition in every possible sense. Gerry Anderson built something genuinely unique in 1967, a series willing to let its hero die on screen, willing to make its villains sympathetic, and willing to push hard enough against the acceptable limits of the medium that a foreign government felt obligated to intervene. So here's the question for the comments. Which fact hit hardest? Was it Scarlet starting out as a Mysteron agent? The Season 2 that never happened? Or the voice actor so committed to staying anonymous he asked to vanish from his own credits? Drop it below. This is Spectrum, and we are absolutely green.